Hey, this is Harry, and this is my review of Wake Up Dead Man, the latest Knives Out mystery, written and directed by Rian Johnson. I'm doing my best imitation of church windows, light streaming through. This is the best place in my apartment to get that effect for you, my viewers. So, the movie. Um, this is a very meta mystery. One of the characters in the story gets the idea of how to execute a locked door mystery by reading Agatha Christie, Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and there's another Agatha Christie, and then there's some other stories as well. Murder at the Vicarage, and then the characters themselves start a book club to start reading, like the detectives who are trying to figure out who did it, start reading all the books to figure out um, how perpetrator got the idea for it, and then to solve it. So that's how kind of meta this movie is. It's made by Rian Johnson, who's a real geek who loves Agatha Christie and classic whodunits and murder mysteries, and it's the third in the series. I think people who like this series will get a lot out of it. Um, I was pretty annoyed by Benoit Blanc by the end of this movie. He's just really obnoxious, and his accent is really broad, and the way he kind of barges into this movie halfway through, I was actually enjoying it much more when Josh O'Connor's character, Reverend Judd, this kind of young, um, aspiring priest who has been sent to this small town in upstate New York. Um, I was enjoying the movie much more when he was the main character. Um, just a better, more subtle actor than the way that Daniel Craig is playing Benoit Blanc. Um, but anyway, most of you have probably seen the trailer. Josh Brolin plays this kind of angry, older, conservative Catholic, um, and he is killed in small room by the side of the church. And the mystery kind of unfolds from there. The local police get involved, and there's all these questions of faith. And Judd Duplessis, the main character played by Josh O'Connor, um, needs to kind of wrestle with the guilt he feels because he didn't do it. He didn't kill his elder man of the cloth, but he kind of wanted him dead, and they had fought just a few days earlier. And so Ryan Johnson uses this as a vehicle to explore like small town life, kind of conspiracy theories. It's very politically charged. That's kind of where one of my big problems with the movie comes with in. The movie really has this attitude of like older, bitter, white conservative men are ruining Christianity, right? It needs to be much more hippie, sort of Jesus-like and welcoming and forgiving and so on. Um, Certainly, it should be forgiving. It should always believe in people and their ability to kind of reorient towards truth and towards God and so on. But I don't think that's the problem with Christianity. This is like very clearly a political allegory about how terrible Donald Trump is, or whatever. And obviously, I don't agree with that politically. I don't agree with total hysteria and opposition to the MAGA movement. I like a lot of what the MAGA movement stands for, and so I'm not a fan of the kind of very heavy-handed political allegory in this movie. I do like some of the settings in this movie. It's very kind of gothic and plays with this old town that's a little bit hollowed out. There's still plenty of people there, but it feels very, I've lived in the Hudson Valley in upstate New York and in other areas throughout New England that feel a lot like that. Like it's a nice town. It looks like it's kind of on the Hudson River. And despite that, it doesn't feel happening. It's mostly like older people, some families with kids. It's people who are a little bit jaded, people who needed a cheap place to live, people who are looking for kind of a second chance at life. And the movie definitely plays with what's the responsibility of a priest um, who kind of takes the trust of people who deeply need somebody to tell them, to both give them hope and to give them like pragmatic steps towards recovery. And in one case, the person is like physically disabled and she can no longer play the cello. Um, And what's the responsibility of the priest to make good on that, right? Because on the one hand, they can't step in as God or anything, but they can promise that God exists and will um, heal them, forgive them, comfort them in their solitude. Ultimately, this is a movie written by somebody who's obviously not a Christian. Like Rian Johnson is obviously not a Catholic. Um, he gives Daniel Craig the best kind of the most like thoughtfully written speech, which is just tearing down Christianity in general. And then he still kind of tries to pretend to be interested in what Reverend Judd is doing at the end of the movie and basically just watering down Christianity and just saying it's like, yeah, we accept all that's happened in the past and we're we don't fight, we just welcome people in with open arms, which is a good attitude to have, but obviously you have to have principles as well. And there's not really any evidence of that from Judd. So yeah, ultimately very disappointed in this movie. I think the whole like kind of second half of this movie, the setup takes a long time, and then we get into solving the mystery itself, solving the murder. And there's like a couple of nights where the murder's being solved, and they figure out somebody called in an order to move a tombstone and to, have a start a burial kind of proceeding even before this guy died. So they're thinking, what this must have been the murderer, right? He knew he was going to kill the Reverend. There's somebody else who's acting suspiciously and has a lot of secrets and so on. And there's a big revelation with him or her at the end of the movie. And that whole last section of the movie where you're figuring out what happened, and there are a bunch of flashbacks to the night of all the chaos and the night where somebody innocent died, the night where Judd blacked out, the night where there was a supposed resurrection and so on. That just drags on forever. It goes on for like 45 minutes. We see the same scene on like video footage like four times. It's endless. I mean, it is just very trying your patience. I think the second one had a lot of that as well. Like it had some good ideas and well staged scenes, but ultimately we ended up just watching the same events like two or three times over and over again and having people comment on them and saying things like all along so and so was in the dining room and they were waiting for that chance or whatever. And that whole kind of like Clue kind of moment, really fun in the movie Clue, which is one of my favorite movies, comedies from the 80s, but not so fun when it's like supposed to be a fast-paced um, kind of mystery movie and you're just kind of dragging out the last hour forever. So that was a problem. The movie's also just kind of disgusting. I won't spoil what happens with the bodies, but they're in like this gelatinous whatever. There are like two bodies that are being kept even after their um, kind of owners were killed, which I just didn't like or understand. I don't know. Um, and as often happens in these kind of movies, there were like multiple people that were in on it, not to spoil anything, and one of them betrayed the other. And so there's no clear cut like who did it, right? Like everybody was kind of acting out of self-interest and kind of just covering themselves up. And then once the treasure was gotten a hold of, there's a diamond that's worth a ton of money. That's part of the story. Um, then people turn on each other and they're like, "Oh, we had a plan, but I think I'm gonna just take this now because I don't want to share it with anyone." Um, so there's a lot of that you would kind of expect from a mystery, and I don't think it's handled particularly well, personally. Just wasn't to my taste as far as how to resolve a mystery. What else is there to say about this movie? Some good performances. I thought Josh O'Connor was very good. I thought Kaylee Spaney, who plays a former cello player who kind of got physically hurt and can't play the cello very well anymore and finds it even difficult to stand up and walk. I thought she gave a really empathetic performance. Kerry Washington was constantly on the verge of crying in her role, but her performance was fine. Um, yeah, there are plenty of good things about this movie. The cinematography, like it looks good. Some of the acting is great, but too much of the flashback and explain things. and then like re-explain them when some new revelation happens, and then re-explain them. Too many like attempts at twists that don't really rewrite what we've seen before. They just like add something weird circumstance on. Too much of that, and too much suspense, like too not, or I should say, too much climax. Like it's not like the last hour is slowly building suspense, and then there's a showdown at the end, and a battle of wits or a battle of religious interpretations of Catholicism. It's more like there are just like little blips of action and chaos uh, and where the music blares and everything, and then the movie quiets down, and then there's another one a few minutes later. So it's kind of exhausting, right? You need to like draw those out. You need to kind of pace them, or just have like a slow build up to one big climax instead of these constant climaxes, and then these drawn out like periods of exposition or running around or talking on the phone with random people. So not a fan of that. It just felt very heavy-handed. Overall, I'd say you don't need to see Wake Up Dead Man. It just has too many flaws. And again, I think it's really heavy-handed, like message movie politically, and doesn't really understand Catholicism very well. But plenty of people like this movie, and there are plenty of reasons to like it. So if you're a fan of the first two movies, you might very well enjoy this one. So that's my review of Wake Up Dead Man, written and directed by Rian Johnson and starring Daniel Craig, Josh O'Connor, and Glenn Close. And I hope you subscribe and like this video. Thanks for watching.